What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another daily drop brought to you by Tar Heel Illustrated.com. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, we're here for a fun little basketball drop is what I'm going to call it. Is we're going to be discussing what non-conference basketball games we are looking forward to the most. So I'm going to pick one. AJ's going to pick one, and we're going to talk about it for a few minutes. So, AJ, I'm going to kick it to you first. I'm intrigued to see what game you're most interested in, because looking at this non-conference slate that is out, there is some pretty nice matchups in there, particularly in some of these neutral site, tournaments that Carolina's going to be playing in. So I've got an idea of what you might choose, but go ahead and let me know, because I'm torn between a few, and even myself, I'm still trying to figure out exactly which one I want to roll with.
Well, I guess a good example of how entrenched I am on this pick is that I changed my mind right before you hit the record button. So, I mean, they're all big. You know how I am.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few.
Bradford's big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Bahamas is going to be great, and Bahamas will be cool. There'll be some really important telling games there, but I'm going to go with the UConn game and the Jimmy V Classic at MSG. I think that's deep enough into the season where we'll really start to have a pretty good handle on what this Carolina team's all about. And it's against the defending national champions. It's in MSG, which Hebert wants to play a game there every year. It's the Jimmy V Classic, which always gets a lot of attention. And also it's, sort of a home away from home for UConn. UConn Stores is not, I think it's less than 2 hours from MSG. Mm-hmm. So they'll have a really, really good showing. They'll have a better crowd there than Carolina will. So it'll have a little bit of a neutral site road game element to it. And I think that'll be good for this team. I'm intrigued by all of them. I'm intrigued by Oklahoma and Charlotte, because that's one of those games where Oklahoma's a pretty good program, although they struggled last year. That'll be one of those games where we can get a really good gauge on Carolina's mental strength, that if Oklahoma's struggling, Tar Heels are playing well, they can't play down to competition in a game like that, right? See, I'm already over analyzing right now, Jacob, and we're in July.
What we do, man.
Yeah, I know UCLA is very intriguing in Atlanta. I'm just glad the CBS Sports Classic isn't too far away for a change. That's a lot of flights to get there, Vegas and other places, so I'm glad it's there. That'll be interesting as well. But and Carolina doesn't historically do real well annually in the CBS Sports Classic. I think that's been a point in the season where we're under Roy, he was still searching, and he didn't go into those games, hey, this is who we are. We're going to go win this game. I think the other teams have been more that way. And then last year they struggled against what turned out to be a really bad Ohio State team and barely beat them. That was the Pete Nance coming out party. But let's face it, I think that Danny Hurley has UConn back. They won a title, but this wasn't a flare-up. I think UConn is a major player now, and they're going to be really good annually. So UConn, what they were under Jim Calhoun, I think that's what UConn is again. And you could argue that from 1999 to 2013 or so, 14, that UConn was the best program in the country by far. So I think this is a good barometer game. And probably by the time we get to that game, if UConn's rolling, it will be an enormous opportunity for a new look Tar Heels team to get themselves a very important win, and also a huge boost in confidence that they haven't had a ton of in December the last few years.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I like that pick, AJ. I do. And that one's pretty high on my list as well, because of the defending national champ. I'm not sure exactly. I do agree. I think UConn is on the right track, obviously coming off a national championship. I do expect that program to continue to be good, but I'm not a UConn expert. I don't know exactly how good or they're projected to be this season. But again, with that matchup being so close to UConn, MSG, and the Jimmy V Classic, Carolina doesn't typically play in that event. It's a little bit different for the Tar Heels to be playing in an event like the Jimmy V Classic. It's just not something we're used to seeing. And my pick, full disclosure, I actually changed my mind about a minute ago. So we're kind of in the same boat in this one in terms of just completely flip-flopping before we actually have to make a pick. And I was torn between the Tennessee game in Chapel Hill and the UCLA game, the CBS Sports Classic. Originally, I was going to go with UCLA. because it's UCLA, the brand, CBS Sports Classic, big event, big occasion, and again, a game and an event that Carolina has struggled in years. So it'd be nice to get a win in that. But I'm going to go with Tennessee instead, AJ. I'm going to go with Tennessee ACC SEC Challenge in Chapel Hill. And I think the reason is we don't see a ton of the time, a ton of these big time programs come into Chapel Hill. A lot of these non-conference games tend to be in tournaments, especially the bigger ones, tend to be in neutral site venues. But welcoming in a team like Tennessee, we've seen it in the past. We've seen Gonzaga come in a few years ago. That was a great game. That's one of the greatest games that I've covered in the Smith Center. Besides, the Duke Carolina rivalry and everything like that, that's one that stands out, and the one that I really remember. Michigan coming into the Smith Center a couple years ago, that was a really fun game, really good atmosphere in there as well. So I'm going to go with the Tennessee factor. I think it's going to be electric in the Smith Center for that game. I think it's also a big game for the Tar Heels, not only playing a big-time SEC opponent, but in the Smith Center, that's a game that I think Carolina needs to win if they're going to reach the heights this season that they want to reach. I think that's a very important game in the non-conference and will be a very important booster potentially for Carolina's NCAA tournament resume. And we know how crazy the NIT rankings work, AJ. That's a win you need to be picking up in the Smith Center, come March. So that one stands out for me, and I think it's because of the non-conference matchups, bigger games that we have seen in the Smith Center, how good they've been, how fun they've been to cover, and how much the atmosphere has kind of affected those games. And let's not forget about the Rick Barnes factor as well. I know we talked about it on a previous one. There's a lot of Carolina fans that have a little bit of animosity towards him for that kind of rivalry he had with Dean Smith a long, long time ago now. But I think that adds a little bit of a different element to it as well. And I'm also channeling the game that Carolina played at Tennessee a few years ago. I believe it was the Kobe White year, Luke May's final year. They played at Tennessee. I remember that being a really, really fun game to watch in Tennessee. And I think we'll see the reverse this time in Chapel Hill. So that's my pick. But again, we talked about it a little bit. I think you could probably make a case for just about any of these bigger non-conference matchups. And I think, you'd be fine in saying it because, again, you've got UCLA, you've got Oklahoma, you've got UConn, you've got Tennessee. You've even got some of the battle for Atlantis, which hasn't been announced yet, but I would guarantee you there'll be some big time matchups for that as well. Yeah,
I guess the bracket hadn't been announced. No, the bracket hasn't been announced, but the teams are there. They'll play a couple. The Tennessee series, I think the road game at Tennessee was the year after the title. It was 17-18. So it was
You're right. It was the year after. I always get those mixed up.
That was when Garrison Brooks and Sterling Manley played really well, and they were freshmen.
Yep. I always want to say it's Kobe White year for some reason, but no, you are right. You are right.
Yeah, I think you actually made a great choice because you don't get a whole lot of big time opponents that come in non-conference games anymore because the 20-game ACC schedule, and there's just they want to play in more of these neutral site games, so they've added those. It wasn't that long ago when there was a home and home with Arizona, home and home with UConn.
I miss those days. Yeah,
home and home with Kentucky. You had a lot of other clubs come in. Stanford came in a few years ago, home and home with them. They've been up and down. So I would love to see more of that, which is why I wish the ACC would not have a 20-game schedule. It's too much. I think an 18-game or even a 17-game schedule. And there's people are 17. Well, you can have an odd number. There's no law saying you don't have to. You have to have an even number. Because I think the league needs more of these non-conference opportunities to help.
Agreed.
It's no coincidence that the league has hurt itself with 20-game schedules. So because it's built-in losses for everybody. And if you're in a situation like last year, once you get to conference play, you're sort of wedged into a hole for your league. And it's kind of hard to move up in the net rankings if the league wasn't great and failed on some of its few opportunities. So yeah, Tennessee, I think so. I think it'll be an early opportunity for all these new guys to get a feel of what it's like to play in a big game in the Smith Center. You mentioned Gonzaga. That was one of the best crowds I've ever seen at the Smith Center.
Yeah, it was awesome.
For a game. And they played really, really well that night. And that was that was a damn good Gonzaga team. And that was a Carolina team that became pretty damn good after a while. And I think that night helped them a lot. So I agree. The Tennessee game is really a good choice. I'm going to still stick with UConn, but you kind of pulled me in your direction a little bit with that choice. And actually, my initial choice was UCLA and Atlanta. And if I had to rank them, no one's asked me to, but I will real quickly. I'm going to put the Tennessee game ahead of the UCLA game. So, Jacob Turner, you have persuaded me some.
Hey, man, I try, AJ. And again, it's a toss-up, but I think that the fact that it's in Chapel Hill too, and I'm a little biased as well because that's a game that I'm at least hoping to be at. I don't really travel like you do, obviously, so maybe that plays a little bit of factor as well, knowing that I'll be in the Smith Center for that one and get to witness that one up close and personal. But yeah, I think I miss the home and homes. I do. I used to love when Carolina went to Kentucky and Kentucky would come to the Smith Center. I know they've moved a lot of these to neutral sites, and I get it. I'm sure they probably more TV revenue and playing in these tournaments probably get a little more revenue out of it. But in terms of the entertainment factor, I would much rather see Carolina play these home and home series with these big time programs instead of just playing in the Superdome in Atlanta or the Hawks Arena in Atlanta. I mean, I get why they do it, but not the most. I think it's a little more interesting when you're going to someone's arena. But again, with ACC schedule being as long as it is too, I understand that conflict as well. But bring back home and home, I guess, is my message. I missed it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Since we're heading in that direction with this conversation, I'm totally with you on that. And that's why I want fewer ACC games.
Yeah.
I'm okay if they keep a lot of these games on neutral site. What I want to see the home and homes, I want to see Arizona State and Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. I want to see Minnesota. I want to see Providence and stuff like that. So you have to go play a true road game at a quality opponent, and you bring them into your building. I think it bolsters the value of the schedule. Go back and look at who they used to play a lot, all these home and homes they used to play and against quality teams. And I'd like to see that again. And we've lost that with the 20-game ACC schedule, but it's not, by the way, just for the record, that's not going to change. I've been talking to a lot of people this offseason, been a very valuable offseason and off the record conversations. And one of them was about the 20-game schedule. He said it's not going to change. I mean, they need it for TV and it hurts the league, but it helps the league. So, yeah, the Benjamins are more important than the W's, I guess. So, although you'd make a lot more by getting a couple more teams in a tournament too, but or at least you'd make some money, make some of it up. But I still want to see some of this quality. And also it's the mid stuff, the mid-level type games, the teams from the Missouri Valley Conference and the Mid-America. Bring in Akron.
Yeah.
Bring in Indiana State instead of Radford and teams like that as your non-conference home games. You can have some of those, but I'd like to see Tulsa come in. How about Temple?
Valparaiso. I mean, Carolina had a few matchups with Valparaiso years ago.
Play some A-10 teams. Play George Mason, play George Washington, play Duquesne and St. Bonaventure. Some of those teams like that are at the lower end of D1, but sort of in the middle. And you could get value out of playing those games as well. But with the 20-game conference schedule and all the neutral site stuff that this team plays, they have 3 neutral site in Bahamas. Then they got Charlotte versus Oklahoma, MSG against UConn, and Atlanta versus UCLA. There's not much room left.
No.
And you want to see true road games out of the league, but they're not going to play a true road game out of the league this year because you won't have any home games. So, either that or add a game to the schedule. See if the petition the NCAA to add a game, or not count. Just add a game. At least get 1 or 2 more games in would make a lot more sense. It helps the Big 12.
Yeah, 100%.
And the ACC power structure understands that, but they can't back away from it, which sucks.
No, yeah, we've talked about it, I think, ever since the 20-game schedule news kind of came out of, I think it's a little bit too much. 18 would be a magic number. Bring a couple more non-conference teams in, maybe a not neutral site game, some home and home series in there, play some of these mid-majors. I think you probably get prepared even more for potential, later in the season by doing that too. But again, we don't make the rules, and as they say, the money makes the world go round. So until the money makes sense to do that, it ain't gonna happen. And I think it's a good place to leave this one off, guys. We want to hear from y'all though as well. So reach out to us on Twitter, reach out to us on Facebook and our website as well. Links are below. We want to hear what non-conference game you're most looking forward to. Is it UCLA? Is it Tennessee? Is it Oklahoma in the Jumpman Invitational? We want to know. So let us know. We appreciate y'all watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so every single time we upload. See you on the next one. Thanks.